Is Festering Desire actually that good? Is the Fishing Wrench a useful weapon for you? Should you get the Battle Pass weapon or even pull on her own signature weapon?
A day isn't that long. Let's see what kind of case this big shot Outlander can build in such a short amount of time.
And while weapon tier lists are based off of, at least on this channel, the math behind the character, we're going to make it as easy for you to follow along so you don't need to know all of the ins and outs of all of the math behind Furina while getting the correct information. The baseline weapon here is going to be 100% of our damage, and this is going to be the Ferryman fishing weapon you can pick up from Fontaine. Now, you are going to have to fish for this, but it does give a very large amount of energy regen. It does give bonus energy regen from its own ability. However, that does only last for 5 seconds. But Furina does need a pretty significant amount of energy even after her buff to her elemental burst, with the cost being reduced to 60. And while you can't make full use of the extra energy regen on the passive of this weapon, it does last for 5 seconds, and you can activate it by using Furina's elemental skill. And while that energy regeneration buff is active, you can pick up extra particles with Furina in the background by using the other character's elemental skills in your party. The weapon right above that is the 5-star key, aka Nilu's weapon. It's going to be about 2% better. Right above that, you have the primordial jade cutter, as well as the light of fuller incision, and also the battle pass weapon, the wolf's fang. Jade cutter and fuller incision are going to be giving you pretty significant bonuses because they are 5-star weapons. Something with a giant amount of crit rate like the jade cutter can stand the test of time just being a stat stick alone. Even if the jade cutter's ability to give you attack based on your HP isn't that useful to Furina, it still gives a ton of crit chance as well as some bonus HP, which makes it a fantastic weapon. The same thing can also be said for the fuller incision. Now, the wolf fang's an interesting one as well. It is a battle pass weapon, and there has been quite a lot of misinformation going around about this weapon. It has crit rate on it, which is something we like to see for Furina. It also is going to increase the elemental skill and burst damage of Furina on top of that. Where the misinformation for this weapon really comes from is from this ability right here. When an elemental skill hits an opponent, its crit rate will be increased by 2%. When an elemental burst hits an opponent, its crit rate will also be increased by 2%. This is at R1. Both of these effects last 10 seconds, and they both have separate stacks with max 4 stacks. So what's the misinformation about the wolf fang? Well, a lot of people just say you don't get crit rate from it at all because it doesn't work off the battlefield, which is true. However, you do gain crit rate from these stacks. It might not be maximum, but you can use your elemental skill and activate it, and then use your elemental burst during your rotation. And during the burst animation time, your elemental skill is going to do some damage to an enemy or two. So you're going to be able to get 2 to 4 crit rate from this ability from your elemental skill at the minimum. You're also going to get an extra 2% crit rate at the minimum from hitting an enemy with your elemental burst, because the burst does have an HP multiplier upon activation. So you're going to get a pretty small amount of bonus crit rate from this ability, but it isn't 0%, which makes this weapon actually pretty good as a 4-star option for Furina. And if you so desire, you could swap Furina in and out periodically so you can refresh the stacks from your elemental skill so they actually never fall off. That's going to be something up to you though, and I'm not saying or advising that you do that. However, you are going to be able to gain some stacks for your burst as well as your skill just in normal play with your Furina for up to at least 10 seconds. Now, Furina's second best weapon is this one right here, the Festering Desire. Yeah, it's her second best weapon. Yeah, it only took about 3 years for the Festering Desire to really have a place, and it's her best free-to-play option at R5. It's going to give you energy recharge, which is a very significant portion of the amount you need for the Furina build at 45.9%. And then it's going to give you elemental skill damage increase of 32%, and then elemental skill crit rate increase by 12%. The skill damage increase and crit rate increase go very well with her kit, especially if you're planning on using an HP percent goblet on your Furina, because there's so many ways to increase at C0 elemental skill or hydro damage or damage percent bonus period from her fanfare stacks, that this is going to work very well in that HP percent goblet build. If you don't have access to Festering Desire, then go ahead and check out some of the ones we just talked about, because I don't think it's coming back. And then the final weapon, with no doubt, is about 10 to 12% better than the Festering Desire, Desire is her own signature weapon, Splendor of the Still Waters. This can give you everything Furina wants: more damage, more crit damage, more HP. It's going to be buffing up the damage your Furina can do in every way possible. The one downside of this weapon, even though it does perform better than Festering Desire, is that you are going to need, just like with all the other non-energy recharge weapons, more energy recharge in your gear. So if you want 10 to 12% more damage than anything else, you don't have Festering Desire laying around, or Jade Cutter, or Fuller Incision, or you don't want to buy the wolf thing on the battle pass, or you don't want to go fishing, then go for her signature weapon. So what about the rest of the weapons? Well, if you don't want to go fish for the ferryman, everything else that we're going to talk about real quick is worse than the ferryman. Doesn't matter if it's a 5-star weapon, a 4-star weapon, the HP event sword. So if your name is something like the Mist Splitter of Forge, or the Black Sword, or the Harbinger of Dawn because the passive doesn't work, or the Vivonia Sword because, yeah, it has energy recharge, well, that's all that it has, or the Dock Hands Assistant.
It's only a game. Why you have to be mad?
None of these things are going to be better. These are all going to be about 3 to all the way up to 15% worse than the ferryman weapon. So with that being said, go ahead, pick out the weapon you want to use for your Furina, and let me know which one you're going for down below. Are you going to be pulling on her brand new signature weapon? If so, I wish you luck. Until then, have fun, take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.